Long time no Q&A. First question, can you get the benefits of collagen by just supplementing with high doses of glycine? If not, why? When it comes to collagen, then the biggest benefit is that it helps with skin aging and reduces the development of wrinkles. Glycine is the biggest amino acid in collagen, so 30% of collagen is glycine, and the glycine contributes to collagen turnover. Now, there isn't any direct evidence that glycine would help to reverse the skin aging the same way collagen peptides would do, but having higher amounts of glycine and adequate amounts of glycine would help with the collagen turnover and thus also have a beneficial effect on skin aging. You need about 12 grams of glycine for optimal collagen turnover, and even higher than that in some cases. We don't necessarily know what's the optimal amount of glycine, but you definitely need large amounts of glycine, something like 10 to 12 grams for collagen turnover. But can you then just take glycine and ignore collagen? Well, collagen peptides also have unique benefits on the collagen synthesis and the skin anti-aging that you don't necessarily get from a glycine. We have this 2020 systematic review of the mechanisms of collagen supplementation for skin health, and they identified 3 different mechanisms of action that were beneficial for the skin anti-aging, and they are the direct effects of collagen peptides on fibroblasts, which are this type of skin cells, M2-like macrophages, which is related to the immune system, so the collagen peptides modulate the immune system in a way that helps with skin anti-aging, and also just getting the direct raw material, the precursors for the collagen synthesis. Here you can see the effects of the collagen peptides on the M2 macrophages, so it modulates the immune system and inflammation in a way that leads to the improvement of skin health and collagen synthesis. The collagen-derived fragments also suppress autoimmune response against endogenous collagen, and that also improves skin health. So generally, collagen peptides and glycine have a different effect on the skin anti-aging. So glycine is more for collagen turnover, recycling collagen, so maintaining adequate collagen turnover, whereas the collagen peptides are more like direct precursors. They get broken down into the smaller chains of amino acids that modulate the immune system in a different way, the autoimmune response, as well as providing the raw precursors, one of which is glycine. So they have slightly different effects, and for optimal results, you want to take collagen peptides as well as supplement some glycine. So you want to take glycine for other reasons as well, such as glutathione, general inflammation status, balancing the glycine and methionine ratios, helping with visceral fat, helping with blood sugar response, protecting against advanced glycation end products. So there are a lot of other benefits to glycine that you want to take it anyway, but there are also unique benefits for collagen peptides. And there's a lot more clinical trials on the collagen peptides themselves that we don't have with regular collagen powder or other protein powders or glycine alone when it comes to skin anti-aging and wrinkles. So ideally, you want to take both. Next question, is there a correlation between blood sugar levels and inflammation? Yes, hyperglycemia, so elevated blood sugar levels, will have an inflammatory response on the body. It also causes a lot of damage to the rest of the organs, so causes glycation and has damaging effects on organ function. Because of that, has damaging effects on skin anti-aging. So hyperglycemia, high blood sugar levels are definitely not a very healthy thing. In epidemiological studies, you also probably find an association between elevated blood sugar levels and increased inflammation, which could be because of various reasons. People who have high blood sugar levels, they tend to follow unhealthier lifestyles, they tend to eat worse diets, they eat more processed foods, they're more sedentary, they might not sleep that much, etc. So they have poor metabolic health, insulin resistance, and hyperglycemia, this kind of a metabolic imprint that is then also associated with increased inflammation levels. But even in mechanistic studies, hyperglycemia, elevated blood sugar levels will trigger an inflammatory response. So people who have diabetes, chronically elevated blood sugar levels, then they also have much higher inflammation levels. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to necessarily suppress your blood sugar levels completely low. You can eat plenty amounts of carbohydrates, you can eat hundreds of grams of carbs while maintaining optimal blood sugar levels, normal blood sugar levels, low blood sugar levels, and also low inflammation levels. So my own metabolic health is excellent. My HOMA-IR is extremely low. My fasting insulin is extremely low. My fasting glucose is low as well. And my CRP, my other inflammatory markers, are also extremely low, like close to 0. So it doesn't mean that this elevation in blood sugar whenever you're eating or just eating more carbohydrates would cause inflammation in of itself. You have to look at it more like the entire metabolic imprint, like what is the metabolic signature of the person, because every one of us has different amounts of visceral fat, different amount of insulin sensitivity, different amount of energy requirements, different metabolic rates, different amount of glycogen. So it's not just that this or that. It's more about, okay, what does your blood markers actually say? Do you have high blood sugar? If yes, then there are ways to fix it. Do you have high inflammation levels? If yes, then there are ways to fix it. The most important factors for that is to maintain a physically active lifestyle and to lose weight, mostly body fat. Next question, do you really eat 2 kiwis before bed every night? So usually I have only one single kiwi every night. On some nights I also had a second one, but generally I just eat one. I like the taste. It's kind of a nice evening snack. And there is research that kiwis do help with sleep. There are studies that 2 kiwis before a few hours before bed helps with sleep quality, and the mechanisms probably have to do with serotonin, which then helps with melatonin production as well. Do you need to start eating kiwis? Probably not. You can probably get the same effects from other types of fruits, maybe oranges, berries, blueberries, even some healthy carbohydrates. They can all have similar effects, but I like kiwis and generally a good way to consume them, like in the evening. Next question, no alcohol or sometimes a glass or 2? Personally, I don't consume any alcohol. I haven't consumed alcohol for the last 10 years, and the reason doesn't have to do anything with health. I just don't like it that much. I prefer to stay sober, and I also don't feel like I need to consume alcohol for whatever reason. I have consumed alcohol maybe once or twice within this time frame of these last 10 years. In our wedding with our wife, we had like a glass of wine, etc. So it's not something that I'm 100% against, but I just don't feel like to consume alcohol, and I never end up in situations where I would want to or end up consuming alcohol. So yeah, I have no plans of consuming alcohol. When it comes to the research about the health effects of alcohol, then it's somewhat mixed. Obviously, you have these very famous studies that people say that drinking 1 or 2 glasses of wine a day is actually better for your health, and it's associated with lower diabetes rates, lower heart disease, greater longevity, etc. But usually that's because of some other variables such as socioeconomic status, education levels, and health. So people who are completely sober, they usually do it because of some health-related reasons. Now, of course, there are people like me who just don't drink alcohol, but we are an extreme minority, less than 1% of the population probably, or like a 1% of the population who don't drink alcohol, and we don't have any health problems. But most people who don't drink alcohol do it because of either they were previously alcoholics, or they have some metabolic health issues or liver issues that prevent them from consuming alcohol, medically speaking, like they would have some health problems because of that. So it's hard to say if being zero alcohol is worse for you than consuming 1 or 2 drinks per day. I don't think it is the case. Alcohol is still toxic, especially in large amounts. Of course, there is the principle of hormesis, that small amounts of a toxin can have health benefits, which is true. And I do think that if you're consuming 1 drink a night, then it probably has no long-term negative side effects on your health. Granted that other things are on point. So one thing that alcohol does is that it can raise your liver enzymes, it can also raise your triglycerides, and it can promote the accumulation of visceral fat and liver fat. So if you are someone who has high triglycerides, high liver enzymes, higher amounts of visceral fat than you would like, then cutting down or cutting out the alcohol is one of the most effective ways to improve those markers. So obviously, you can also be very healthy and have optimal liver enzymes, optimal triglycerides, optimal visceral fat, and still consume some amounts of alcohol, but it's less likely to be the case. I know a lot of healthy people who consume, a few drinks per week, and that they do have slightly higher triglycerides and slightly higher visceral fat than I would personally be comfortable with. But, it's still everyone's decision. Maybe that 1 or 2 glasses of alcohol every now and then is good for your mental health or good for your social health or whatever it is the case, but there's no inherent health requirement to drink alcohol, that's for sure. I personally would believe that keeping it as close to zero is optimal. Maybe you can get away with 1 or 2 drinks per week at maximum, in my opinion. Next question, can the kidney increase in size if we take creatine and glycine? No, that's definitely not the case, that taking creatine would increase kidney size, and the same applies to glycine. It's not going to have any effects on your kidney size. The problem actually is that if you have kidney disease or with aging, the older you get, then the kidneys actually decrease in size. So there's no problem that your kidneys enlarge or grow in size, similar to your heart or liver, for example. But the kidneys decline in the size with declining kidney health. So with stage 5 kidney disease, your kidneys quite shrivel up quite a lot, and the same applies to aging. And as a result of that, they can't function that well, they can't filter the blood that effectively, and you end up having some serious health complications, and you might potentially die as a result of that. So there is no issue that creatine would increase the kidney size, and there's no link between creatine decreasing kidney size either, so that it would cause kidney damage or kidney disease in otherwise healthy people. If you have already existing kidney disease or kidney damage, then it is not recommended to take creatine. This doesn't apply to glycine. You can still take glycine even with poor kidney health, but you shouldn't take creatine if you have kidney disease or kidney damage. Next question, can a daily sauna be too much? Generally, no. You can take the sauna every day if you want to, and the research suggests that over 4 times a week or 4 or greater times per week of sauna use is associated with significant reductions in heart disease mortality, all-cause mortality, dementia, Alzheimer's, hypertension, and just immunity as well. So you can take the sauna pretty much every day if you wish. The only potential issue could be loss of electrolytes and minerals. If you're sweating a lot, if you also combine it with exercise, then you can be in a quite severe sodium and other mineral deficits. So if you are going to the sauna every day, then you might want to pay more attention to hydration and electrolytes, maybe consume some electrolyte water, supplement magnesium, and chromium is actually one of the biggest minerals you lose in your sweat, relatively speaking. So you might need to supplement chromium as well if you are sweating a lot and you're not getting a lot of chromium from your diet. But otherwise, there's no serious health complications that you could experience if you take the sauna every day and you keep the temperature moderate. 70 degrees Celsius is the optimal temperature. That's like 156 degrees Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken. Higher temperatures than that aren't necessary. There's actually research that 80 degrees Celsius is associated with a 10-year slightly higher increased risk of dementia. That probably might be because of the excess heat. So if it's super hot, then that might have a very long-term, very small increased risk of dementia. So we're talking about 1 to 2% increase. That was in one of the studies that I saw. So it's not a serious health concern, but you don't necessarily want to overheat your brain and body all the time in high temperatures. But moderate heat exposure, 70 degrees Celsius, is very beneficial and helps to sweat out a lot of different toxins, microplastics, pollutants, heavy metals. It's also all been shown to do so in studies. So I like it as a daily excretion method. You should sweat every day, whether that be with exercise or saunas, but you don't need to do it more than 4 times per week. Another issue for men is sperm health. So excess heat around the testicles can decrease sperm production and sperm count, but it also applies more like direct heat and high temperature heat. So the worst things are warm baths, bubble baths, jacuzzis, just even regular hot tubs, hot baths. This excess heat on the testicles directly is gonna nuke your sperm count if you do it every day for several minutes in a row. So that's not like a very healthy thing for men to do. But the regular saunas, it's not that big of a effect on sperm count unless you are doing very high temperatures. And you can also mitigate it with cooling the testicles. So like some sort of ice pack or a cooling pad, something like that. I want to take a quick break to let you know about my favorite wellness devices, which are the Bond Charge red light therapy devices. You've probably seen many of your favorite longevity influencers using these red light therapy devices, but do they actually work? Yes, they do. Red light therapy has been shown to have many benefits on skin anti-aging, hormone optimization, pain management, and even exercise performance. I use my device every day for 15 minutes, especially during the winter months when there's not much sunlight. It increases my energy in the morning and makes my skin glow. Just check out the testimonials on the Bond Charge website for the before and after pictures of other people. Most red light therapy devices don't have the right wavelengths of light, which might mean you're not getting the claimed benefits. Bond Charge uses the exact wavelengths of light used in research, and they also have near-infrared light that's beneficial to the joints. Head over to bondcharge.com and use the code Siim, S-I-I-M, for a 15% discount. Next question, what's the medium path between your almost perfect routine and a normal person's real life? First of all, I don't think I have some sort of extremely excruciating or a neurotic health routine. Of course, I exercise almost every day. I do certain things on a daily basis to maintain my health. But first of all, it's not, for me, subjectively speaking, it's not difficult, or it doesn't require discipline, or it doesn't require mental effort. So I exercise maybe 45 minutes on average per day. My resistance training workouts are 45 minutes, and my zone 2 cardio is maybe 60 minutes, and my HIIT cardio is only 30 minutes. I do it once a week, the HIIT cardio. So on average, my daily workout is 45 minutes. Does the average person need to exercise every day? Probably not, but you do want to exercise at least 3 to 4 times per week. So a mix of cardio and weights. So at least twice a week for resistance training, ideally 3 times, and at least once a week zone 2 cardio, or once a week some form of high intensity interval blood training. So anyone can do it, in my opinion. Everyone has at least 45 minutes every day to spend on our health, and exercise is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of improving health. If you only have 45 minutes every day to spend on your health, then that time should be spent on exercise. At least maybe 30 minutes should be spent on exercise, 15 minutes should be spent on something else like relaxation or stretching or something like that, walking, spending time with family or something like that. Besides exercise, when it comes to diet, then I don't also have a very neurotic or strict diet. I actually don't have any real restrictions on my dietary intake. Obviously, I don't consume junk food and ultra-processed foods on a regular basis, but I do consume, some grains, fruits, berries, legumes, beans, meat, fish, dairy, nuts, seeds. So I consume pretty much all different food groups, with the exception of, margarine and trans fats and those kind of things. So I don't think there needs to be any like a perfect diet for anyone. You can have 80% whole foods diet and you can achieve perfect blood work, perfect health with just that. There's no requirement to have 100% perfect whole foods diet to be in perfect health and to have perfect blood work. It's definitely not required. You only need to optimize it for up to like 80%. If you start to optimize it for like 100%, then you might gain, let's say, 1% extra health benefits. But is it worth it? Is it worth the time investment? And is it worth the extra discipline? Probably not. You can already achieve perfect health and perfect blood markers with a 80% whole foods diet. And the final thing I want to mention here is probably walking. So walking is also very beneficial. I walk around 10,000 steps a day. The minimal requirement would be 8,700 steps. That's going to be associated with a 60% reduced risk of all-cause mortality compared to walking only 2,000 steps a day. And practically speaking, 8,700 steps is 1.5 hours of walking. And this includes, walking around the house, walking to the store, walking in the office place. So it doesn't actually have to be that you walk deliberately 1.5 hours. You rack up quite a lot of steps, probably 6,000 steps already with your daily commuting and daily house chores and those kind of things. And you need to add an additional 2,000, 3,000 steps with deliberate walking, which will take you maybe 30 minutes of deliberate extra walking. Next question, is whey protein overrated? Personally, I think whey protein is not overrated. I think it's actually underrated. It's by far the most bioavailable form of protein in the world. It's more bioavailable than real food because it's concentrated and it's isolated from other ingredients. So you're getting super highly bioavailable, optimized for muscle protein synthesis ingredient. So 30 grams of whey protein, it's going to give you something like 22 grams of protein and very high amounts of all these essential amino acids. That's going to maximize muscle protein synthesis. And because it's a dairy product, it can also have beneficial effects on your immune system and metabolic health through other means. Now, some people obviously are allergic to dairy and whey. They shouldn't consume it if that's the case. But otherwise, healthy people, if they don't have any gut issues, any allergic issues, then whey protein can be a very beneficial way to ensure you get your adequate daily protein intake for the day. Are protein powders necessary? Absolutely not. You can just eat whole foods. And just because whey protein is more bioavailable than beef or eggs doesn't mean that you need to consume it. So there is a very strange myth on nutrition space that the food you need to eat needs to be super bioavailable and super nutrient dense all the time. The truth is you can cover all your daily vitamins and minerals with probably like 500 calories of nutrient-dense foods. So all of your calories don't need to be super nutrient-dense. If 500 of your calories come from some of the nutrient-dense foods out there, then you're pretty much getting all the vitamins and minerals your body needs. But with that being said, whey protein is the most bioavailable form of protein out there because of the way it's processed, it's isolated. But that doesn't mean that you need to consume it. It's just there is no inherent harm to it if you don't have an allergic response to dairy or whey. Next question, beauty-wise, is mewing, face sculpting or massaging a scam or worth it? So mewing refers to this, maintaining a proper tongue posture that helps with nasal breathing, and that is supposedly good for your jaw development. So, children who breathe through the mouth, they have like a crooked jaw, collapsed jaw, like underdeveloped jaw, etc., and poorly developed nasal cavities. So you definitely don't want to be breathing through your mouth, and 90% of the day you want to spend breathing through the nose. You should breathe only through the mouth when you're doing some form of exercise, or if you're talking, or you're very energized, or you're running up and down the stairs or something like that. So most of the time you definitely should breathe through the nose. Should you be doing deliberate mewing? I'm not sure about that. Mewing probably can be a therapeutic option for people who have poor breathing patterns, underdeveloped jaws, to improve upon that slightly. So it's more of like a, I guess, physiotherapy for the face in that sense, that some people might need to do. Is it inherently necessary? Like, I'm not mewing, but I have like pretty good jawline. I have a pretty good, a face structure, bone structure as well. And I never, mewed in my life. I never mewed as a child, probably because of I was breathing through my nose as a child, and I was otherwise healthy as a child. So there's no need for me to do mewing, but it can be quite useful for some individuals. Now, the other things that you mentioned, the face sculpting or face massaging, there is actually studies on, face yoga or deliberate types of face massages that do apparently improve skin wrinkles and facial aging as well. Now, the thing is that your face, your skin is a muscle. There's a bunch of muscles on your face. With age, those muscles atrophy, they become weaker. So if the face skin or the face muscles start to sag, then the skin on top of it will also start to sag. So one way to counteract that is obviously to support that with facial exercises, different types of massages or face yoga exercises. They probably help with tightening the muscles of the face and toning, I guess, the facial muscles. So there is some element of truth to that, and I do think that they work. And there is some studies actually to support that. Now, the one other method to support that is to do like microneedling or radiotherapy, taking collagen supplements, etc. Like a few supplements out there that have been shown to improve skin aging. So they can all be supportive, but some facial exercises are probably a net positive as well. Next question: what are your daily non-negotiable fat sources? So I don't have any non-negotiable fat sources. I guess the only non-negotiable fat source would be my body fat. Because that's what you need for survival. You don't need to consume a specific amount of fat every day. Your body can go without dietary fat for quite a long time. You can not eat anything, and you can eat zero fat for few weeks probably and be fine. You would lose a lot of body fat in the process. But your body is very resilient. Your body can convert certain nutrients into dietary fat or triglycerides and use that for energy. Obviously, for optimal health, you need things like omega-3s and other things. But let's say if I skip a day of certain dietary fats, then that's fine. But I do try to, like, over the course of the week, I do try to get omega-3s and monounsaturated fats from olive oil, for example, or avocados, etc. I'm not a huge, consumer of dietary saturated fats. Most of my fats come from omega-3s, avocados, nut seeds, olive oil. I think those are my biggest fat sources. Dairy as well, that has some saturated fats. So most of my fats come from those sources. I only prioritize omega-3s, and that's pretty much it. If I need to skip a day of not taking my omega-3s, or if I consume zero dietary fat for a few days, then I'm going to be fine, because your body is very resilient and you don't need to consume them every single day. Obviously, for optimal health, you need to consume them regularly, but there's no non-negotiable that I absolutely need to consume. I would much rather consider protein a non-negotiable rather than fat. And of course, you can go without protein as well for several days without any problems. Next question: how to heal kidneys? I have no damage but have high creatinine and eGFR of 73. So it sounds like you have high creatinine levels and your eGFR is low, 73, is categorized as an initial stage of kidney disease. But the problem is that eGFR is calculated from creatinine. So because your creatinine levels are high, the calculated eGFR is going to be low. But you can also calculate eGFR from cystatin C. The problem with creatinine is that it's very sensitive to muscle mass, exercise, how much protein you eat, and whether you supplement creatine or not. All those things can increase creatinine levels, which then artificially creates the illusion that you have poor kidney function. Whereas if you have optimal or good normal cystatin C levels, then your eGFR might be normal. So it's much more important, more accurate to measure your eGFR by looking at your cystatin C. Of course, creatinine levels matter. If you have extremely high creatinine levels out of the normal range, then that's not a healthy thing either. Even if you are very muscular, you take creatine, you eat protein, you exercise, you shouldn't have extremely high creatinine levels. I take creatine, I exercise regularly, I have a lot of muscle mass, but my creatinine levels are still normal, and even, let's say they're not extremely low, but they're on the middle, so 50 percentile below that. So they say on the bottom half of the reference range. So I have very good creatinine levels, relatively speaking, to someone who has high amounts of muscle mass and who takes creatine and has vigorous exercise program. And I also have optimal cystatin C levels very low. So my eGFR is extremely high because of that. My eGFR is 120, 115, 110, depending on the test. So it's well above 100, which is the optimal range. So first of all, you need to calculate your eGFR from cystatin C. If you haven't measured cystatin C, measure it, and then you can use online calculators, free calculators. I think kidney.org has a calculator where you calculate your eGFR from cystatin C, and it can also calculate it from creatinine if necessary. So first of all, you need to do that. Second of all, how do you heal kidneys? Kidneys can be improved upon unless it's already in a very progressed or severe stage of kidney disease. In the initial stages of kidney disease, it can be improved upon. The biggest harm for the kidneys comes from high blood pressure and high blood sugar levels. So hypertension and hyperglycemia, they both damage the kidneys and lead to water retention and other kind of issues as a result of that. So fixing the blood pressure with things like... so blood pressure is interesting. If you don't have hypertension, then you don't necessarily need to restrict sodium. But if you have high blood pressure, then reducing the sodium is definitely the most effective way to improve upon the kidney function in the short term. So if you have high blood pressure, cutting the sodium to something like 1500 milligrams or 1000 milligrams a day is going to, in the short term, very quickly help to lower the blood pressure and also improve kidney function as a result of that. Other things for blood pressure is obviously blood sugar levels and insulin sensitivity. You need to fix that as well. There's multiple ways to improve blood sugar levels. You can go on a low-fat diet, or you can also go on a low-carb diet. Both can work, but the most important thing is, I guess, using that extra energy, using those glucose molecules for fuel. And that entails increasing your energy expenditure, losing weight, improving insulin sensitivity, helping the body to produce insulin to shuttle the glucose into the cells. So exercise, weight loss, some form of dietary restriction, whether that be fat or carbohydrate restriction, ideally both. That would be the fastest way to improve blood sugar levels and improve blood pressure as well, to go on a lower carb, lower fat diet, which just entails a severe calorie restriction. Fasting is also a very powerful way to improve blood pressure as well as blood sugar levels, obviously, because you're not eating anything, your body uses the glucose for fuel, and in the process, you'll experience a drop in blood pressure as well, and the kidneys will automatically improve as a result of that. So, there's no single answer. It all depends on the individual. What is their issue of why they have high blood pressure or high blood sugar or poor kidney function? But in most cases, it entails modifying the diet, exercising, lowering, let's say, sodium intake, lowering carb and fat intake, sleeping properly, managing stress. Saunas probably can also help with blood pressure through excreting water and sodium. And they also have insulin sensitizing effects, so they improve blood sugar levels. Next question. I'm not overweight. I eat 2 grams per kilogram of protein. I lift heavy, but I have a small belly. Why? So I guess you have this small round belly or a pot belly at the bottom of your abs. First of all, the belly, the abdomen is the last place you lose fat upon. So to get abs, especially to lose fat on the lower abs, you need to be in a very lower body fat percentage. So if you don't see your abs, you have a small belly, then you just need to lose more weight. And it doesn't matter how much you exercise. If you're not in a calorie deficit, then you're not going to lose fat either. So I guess the biggest recommendation would be to look at your calorie intake, go through a few days of tracking, weigh all the food, track it, see how many calories and fats and carbs and proteins are you actually eating. There is a huge discrepancy between how much people think they eat versus how much they actually eat. So, and especially it's very associated with overweight people. Now, I'm not trying to fat shame people or something like that, but overweight people are very bad at estimating how many calories are they actually eating, and they underestimate it by several hundreds of calories. So they might think that, okay, I'm eating 1,500 calories, but in reality, they're eating 2,000 or 2,500 calories. That's extremely common. Even registered dietitians and nutritionists are very bad at actually estimating how many calories are they eating, because it's, it's very hard to do with your eyes. You need to actually weigh the food and see how much calories and grams it has. So going through a few days of weighing all the food, calculating the calories, tracking them is very eye-opening in that sense that you will realize, okay, this much food actually has this much calories. You would be surprised how small the serving sizes actually are visually. You might think, okay, a serving of ice cream or whatever is this much, but it's actually this much. So you're putting one serving, but you end up getting 2 or 3 servings. So you're getting double the amount of calories than you thought you were. So that's just, I guess, an unfortunate reality that people are very bad at estimating calories. We can't do it visually that well. We need to track it. Unless you're a super extreme bodybuilder or very experienced with tracking, those people are like laser eyes. I'm also quite good at it, estimating the calorie intake visually, because, 7-8 years ago, I was tracking everything for a few months, and I developed this, understanding about the different calorie amounts and different macro amounts of different foods as well. So I can already estimate, okay, how much protein am I getting? How many calories am I getting approximately? You don't need to be 100% precise with it, but you need to get it at least into the plus and minus 10% range of accuracy. The second thing, protein intake. Yes, higher protein intake can help with weight loss, but not in the absence of calorie restriction. So if you eat, 500 grams of protein a day, yes, you will lose a lot of those calories for digesting the protein. About 30% of those calories will be spent on digesting the protein, but it doesn't mean that eating extra protein couldn't prevent you from losing fat. So you can still gain fat by eating, enormous amounts of protein. Contrary to what some people might say. So protein isn't free calories. Protein is less calories than you're eating, right? So you're spending some calories on digesting the protein, but you can still overconsume calories by eating too much protein. And 2 grams per kilogram per day is more than enough. I'm not saying that you need to reduce that protein intake, but it might be that some of those extra calories that are preventing you from losing the belly fat are in protein. It can also be fats and carbs. Like, you ideally need to restrict all the calories or reduce them slightly to reach a calorie deficit. But 1.6 grams per kilogram is already enough for maximal muscle growth, and you don't inherently need more than that. So you can already cut down on some of the protein to reach the calorie deficit. And the other calories probably come from added fats. Fats are even harder to detect than other foods because they're very small and they're very calorie dense. Like a tablespoon of olive oil is over 100 calories, and you can easily add 3-4 tablespoons of oil to your salad without even noticing, and you don't visibly see the fat if it's mixed together with the vegetables or other foods. So it's definitely a huge source of extra calories for a lot of people. The next thing would be training the abdomen as well directly. You can sculpt your abs slightly by treating them as another compound exercise. So usually people train abs by doing hundreds of crunches, right? So you're not directly, burning calories in the abdomen, but if you have more sculpted abs, bigger muscles as abs, then those abs will be more visible even at higher body fat percentages. So doing things like hanging knee raises or hanging leg raises doing things like the ab wheel rollouts, the preacher, I think it's the preacher crunches or something, where you're doing like heavy weights crunches. Doing heavier lifts with the 40 abs rather than doing hundreds of crunches will also help to define the abdomen muscles slightly and make them more visible even at higher body fat percentage. For the last bit of belly fat at the bottom of the abs, under the belly button, you need to be dieting more and lose more body fat generally, because that's literally the last place where you will lose the body fat from. There's also some research that combining aerobic exercise with specific ab exercises can, quote unquote, spot reduce fat on the abs. So there was a study from 2 years ago where they did several sets of ab exercises followed by 30 minutes of cardio or something like that. So first you train the abs with some exercises, and then doing cardio after that apparently has some spot reducing effect. So you can try that as well. Next question, routine for tendon injury recovery. So tendons are very tricky because they're smaller joints and they don't have very good blood flow. So that's the reason why it takes such a long time for tendons like your elbows to recover. So one way to support the recovery is to obviously still move. If you're completely stagnant, like if you break an arm and you are put in a cast, then your muscles will atrophy because you're not using it. And it takes a longer time, actually, counterproductively, to recover. So what you want to do is still use the tendon and the arm or the limb that is injured and do like easier exercises. You don't want to do heavy lifts with the injured tendon, but doing some lighter exercises, even squeezing or moving the fingers or just squeezing the muscles a little bit, that can help with the recovery because of directing more blood flow to the region. There's things like the katsu bands that I find extremely helpful in this scenario, because the katsu bands, they restrict blood flow slightly into the limb, or they restrict the blood going out. They don't restrict it going in. So then the blood pools into the limb and you get this swelling effect. You get an extremely good pump by using blood flow restriction bands, and you can stimulate the muscles in a way that you would lift heavy weights without actually overloading the joints. So the katsu bands or blood flow restriction bands are extremely good for different kinds of injuries like tendons and knee injuries. You just put them on and do very light exercises. You can just even lift your phone or something else like a small ball, and you will get like an extremely good pump. The second, after that, you can also use some peptides. BPC 157 is notorious for tendon joint injuries. I've also used it myself. There are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people online who have also used BPC for accelerating tendon injuries. They appear to work extremely well, and oftentimes people who've had some long-term injuries that come back, they can be resolved with some BPC, because BPC stimulates angiogenesis, the growth of new blood vessels. It helps different kinds of growth pathways and these recovery pathways, that it has anti-inflammatory effects. So it's extremely effective for tendon injuries specifically. And you can also take it orally, so you don't need to inject it. You don't need to mix it and inject it. You can just take oral tinctures, or there's also oral capsules. Yes, the oral PPC is less bioavailable than the injectable one, but most people don't like to inject things, me included. So taking the BPC orally is still better than not taking it, in my opinion. Collagen can help with tendon injuries, but it's not as effective as physical movement and BPC. Next question, do you recommend HRT for menopause? HRT stands for hormone replacement therapy. Obviously this is a conversation you need to have with your doctor or some other medical professional. But in my opinion, HRT is going to be life-changing for most women after menopause. The reason being, menopause, completely wipes out your natural estrogen levels, and that increases the risk of frailty, increases the risk of Alzheimer's, increases the risk of heart disease. So after menopause, all the risk of these chronic diseases increases for women exponentially, and not to mention the quality of life. The low estrogen state has a severe negative effects on your mental health, your physical health, your energy levels, your sleep, your aesthetics. You'll look older as well as a result of that. So I don't see any, reason why someone wouldn't want to do HRT as a woman after menopause. And of course, obviously, this is something you need to discuss with your doctor if you are a good candidate or not. And you should do like your own research about it to see what are the pros and cons and evaluate it yourself. But, you know, my wife is probably going to do HRT after menopause. She's already, decided upon that. If I was a woman after menopause, I would also probably do HRT because, yeah, the decline in hormones for women goes off the cliff. For men, you can maintain quite high testosterone levels naturally even into your elderly years because the testosterone decreases gradually, and you can still maintain it quite high with a healthy lifestyle. Whereas for women, it literally drops off a cliff and there's nothing you can do about it. Women will hit menopause at some point. Some do it later, some do it earlier, but it's going to happen at some point. And after that happens, you will experience a decline in the quality of life and physical health. Now, whether or not someone should do the HRT, that is their own decision, and they need to evaluate it and evaluate the pros and cons. I guess one fear people have is that HRT increases the risk of breast cancer or other types of cancer. According to my research, then that's not the case. That's been debunked already for quite a long time, and there's never been a significant increase in the risk of cancer that would mean that women shouldn't do HRT, at least based on my research. And the last question is there a key point for skin phase rejuvenation? Now, with age, there's a lot of things that change with the face and skin health. First of all is, decline in collagen and hyaluronic acid and other elastin and those things that maintain the skin suppleness. There's also the decline in the facial muscles, the muscle atrophy, so that your skin starts to sag as a result of that. There's also photoaging, so sun damage. All those things, they contribute to facial aging and developing wrinkles and looking older. And it shouldn't be like you focus only on one thing or the other. You need to look at them all together because they all contribute to skin aging in different ways. Probably the most significant effect is photoaging. So if you look at someone who is 90 years old, then all of these decades of exposure to the sun has made the skin a lot more wrinkled and photo damaged as someone who is only 20 years old and they've been exposed to the sun for 10, 20 years. So over the course of decades, sun UV radiation is the biggest contributor to intrinsic skin aging, as it's called. So it increases the senescent cell burden in the skin because of the DNA damage from the UV radiation, and also breaks down collagen, makes the skin very thick and I guess more gravelly or gravelly, like ground. Of course, there are health benefits to sun. You don't want to avoid the sun. I definitely don't recommend that. You want to get healthy amounts of sun exposure. But when we're talking purely about the aesthetic side and the skin anti-aging side, then excess sun is the biggest reason for skin aging. Now, there are ways to get around it. You can be mindful about your sun exposure. You can use sunscreen in different scenarios if you need to. I think the most important thing is to just not roast out in the sun for many hours, especially at the midday when the sun is the hottest, the UV index is the hottest. The healthiest sun exposure is in the morning and the evening for both your skin health as well as for your circadian rhythms. You want to get the morning circadian signal for starting the day, and in the evening you want to get the signal that the day is ending and you want to prepare for sleep. In the midday you get mostly the vitamin D benefits, but 30 minutes is already enough to get your daily requirement for vitamin D. So there's no inherent need to sunbathe or be outside in the sun for many hours unless you want to get a tan. But getting the tan is also going to accelerate the skin aging. There's also things like astaxanthin and other carotenoids that help to protect the skin. Things like green tea, the EGC in green tea, chlorogenic acid in coffee, vitamin C, vitamin E, they all help to protect your skin against the sun as well. So they work like this internal sunscreen. So if you are taking astaxanthin, 12 milligrams, 24 milligrams even, then that will increase your skin's tolerance to the UV radiation and reduces the risk of getting sunburns and reduces the skin aging effects of UV radiation as well. All right, that's it for this episode. Make sure you check out my new book, The Longevity Leap, on Amazon. I'd also appreciate if you share this episode with a friend or family member. Other than that, my name is Siim. Stay tuned for the next episode. Stay empowered.